Bonjour, comment allez-vous? J'espère que vous avez passé de bonnes vacances de printemps. Hi guys, how are you doing? I hope you had a nice spring break. This week's lesson is on social issues in modern day France, and we will look at some changes in the French justice system and how France is coming to terms with the aftermath some of the wars that took place in modern time, such as World War II. We will start with a viewing about the lawyers in France and how they um, were involved in a rare strike, and we'll also look at some cultural differences between lawyers in United States and lawyers um, in France. Now, this week's video is by France24, and according to it, in regard to France's justice system, the government's unpopular pension reform plan has led lawyers to go on a rare nationwide strike, and the government has been making its case for a major restructuring and streamlining of the French judiciary system, and much to the concern of everybody involved. Lawyers and magistrates alike warn against stating what they see as a discriminatory two-tier justice system. By the way, in regard to the word for lawyer in French, those of you who took French classes, you know it's avocat. In English, we have a similar word. We have the word advocate derived from avocat, from the French word. And for example, it's tax season now, and some people might be looking for a tax advocate if they need any help with their taxes. As you watch this video, I wanted to point out some cultural differences. First of all, in the attire that the French lawyers wear. So in France and in Quebec courtrooms in Canada, nearly every lawyer is dressed in the same way. They wear long black robes, often with white collars. And in Quebec, they're called by the French name, toge. It's part of a tradition that stretches back to the courts of both the United Kingdom and France, where we can trace the origin of many of their legal norms. And this has to do with, it started back in the 13th century in France and United Kingdom. And actually, this particular attire was instituted back about 300 years ago by Napoleon Bonaparte after the French Revolution. As we watch this video, I'd like for you to consider some of the following questions. So what does this video say about the salary of lawyers in France? Is being a lawyer a lucrative profession? For comparison, as of March 3rd, 2024, the average annual pay for a lawyer in Ohio is about $95,000 a year, and in France is much less. According to the video statistics, about half of lawyers in France declare earnings of less than 40,000 euros a year. That's now it's about the equivalent of $40,000. So think about it. In the United States, for example, the rate is about, for some lawyers, about $250 an hour if you need representation. Sometimes, depending on the law firm, they will take your case for about $5,000. And a retainer, for even for somebody who's looking for example, for a lawyer for just anything, is about $500. Um, and that's just for them to consider taking your case. Now, differences and similarities between lawyers in the United States and France, besides the way they're dressed, besides the pay, is when, for example, is the last time the lawyers in the USA took to the streets to protest, or when did they go on strike? Not recently. So let's think about why. Why do you think the reason is? Um, has to do also with the state being more involved in the lawyers' lives, such as their pension, than in the United States, where a lot of them work for private firms. But please feel free to give your opinion about this if you would like to express it. Okay. And the reason is it's because we're trying to also establish some parallels between the French culture and the culture of the United States. Next, another issue that we are studying is how France is coming to terms with the aftermath of the German occupation in modern day France and the importance of what they call the D-Day. Um, as you know, like many European countries, France was occupied by the German Nazis at the beginning of the 1940s. And in 2019, on June 5th, world leaders gathered in France to mark the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings that a great human cost turned the tide of the World War II and helped liberate Europe from Nazi occupation. You can read more about this event in the article that you have on Canvas. You also have two short videos where French President Emmanuel Macron gives a speech. One of them was he read from a letter sent by a young resistance fighter, Henri Ferté, before he was executed at the age of 16. The question is, what has impacted you the most about the letter of Henri Ferté that President Macron read? I was teaching a French class at Columbus State when um, President Macron read this letter, and it was very emotional. For me, it was emotional for my students. When I played this to them, it was a class that met in person. Um, Also, I wanted to provide some background information about the D-Day operation that took place in Normandy, France. So, France played a significant role in the liberation of Europe from the Nazi German occupation because it was there where Allied troops, including the United States, landed and fought successfully the German army. So this D-Day operation of June 6, 1944, brought together the land, air, and sea forces of the Allied armies in what became known as the largest amphibious invasion in military history. Was given the code name Overlord, delivered 5 naval assault divisions to the beaches of Normandy, France, and they had code names such as Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. And now this invasion force included about 7,000 ships and landing craft manned by over 195,000 naval personnel from 8 allied countries. Almost 133,000 troops from the United States, British Commonwealth, and allies landed on D-Day. Sadly, casualties from these countries during the landing numbered about 10,300, and by June 30th, over 850,000 men, 148,000 vehicles, and 570,000 tons of supplies had landed on the Normandy shores. And fighting by the brave soldiers sailors and airmen of the Allied forces, Western Front, also Russian forces on the Eastern Front, led to the defeat of the German Nazi forces. And in the end, on May 7, 1945, German General Alfred Jolt signed an unconditional surrender at Rheims. France changed the fate of the world. Now, uh, General Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, played a huge role in this operation, um, and would bring a quick end to the war is obvious in this message to the troops of the Allied Expeditionary Forces on June 6, 1944, the morning of the invasion. You can actually read more about this. I put a link. This is from the Eisenhower Library, and you have a link to some of these documents, order of the day. You can look at it, the original, the manuscript, um, the draft of statement, and also when I was in Columbus teaching for at a school, I had the opportunity to meet the great-granddaughter of President Eisenhower. She gave a lecture and she mentioned how difficult the decision of the D-Day operation was, and there were doubts if it would be a success. There was also a message in case of failure that President Eisenhower prepared, that you can read more about it here. Um, and luckily, this operation was a success in the end. President Eisenhower was very intelligent, did a lot of strategic planning. This is a picture I took with the great-granddaughter of President Eisenhower, and it was emotional to hear how much effort planning went into this D-Day, and as I mentioned, this fear of what if this was not a success. But he was a great general, President Eisenhower. Next, we will look at how this the emotional toll of war, and how it's being represented in a short film in French. So the war didn't just take a physical toll on people, but caused emotional trauma as well. And even today, in some countries in Europe, for example, what in the United States we hear siren drills, right, for tornadoes. Over there, they usually happen around noon. They are for a potential military attack. So even so many years after the war concluded, there's still that fear in the back of people's minds of what if they wake up one day and there's going to be another occupation. Now, in this short French film, Le Télégramme by Coralie Farja, the suffering of the war is represented by those left at home, agonizing about their loved ones, and if they will be returning from the battlefield. And in the short film, two women in a French village during a war anxiously await a letter which may or may not be arriving for either of them. And we mentioned about the emotional toll of the war. Didn't just take a physical toll on people, but caused emotional trauma as well. My grandmother was a teenager in Europe when the Nazi invasion took place, and I interviewed her by telephone about the German occupation. Actually, a few months before she passed away in Europe in 2019. I was preparing a lecture for my French class, and I asked her about the war that she went through, and she didn't talk much about it, but she did mention that it is one thing to talk about a war and another to experience it. And we that we didn't go through that war, it's difficult for us um, to imagine um, the pain and suffering and what those people have gone through. And this is a picture of my um, grandmother, and I miss her very much. Coming back to the film Le Telegram, directed by Coralie Farja from 2003. This film tries to cinematically express the emotional pain that the war had on those left at home. And you'll notice that the short film plays with our expectations of a typical film, in our case, a Hollywood film. For example, we don't know the name of the village where the two women live at the beginning of the film. And also, you don't have a very specific um, date of when the action of the film took place in. Okay. The short film won several awards, such as Prix du Jury, Prix du Public, and Prix de la Presse. So you have Prix du Public. This was at the Festival International de Bani. Then you have Prix du Jury lycéen at the Festival de Mamers and Mar, and Prix du Jury, the Festival de Prix du Public en Marseille. So it was a well-regarded short French film. Cinematically, it's part of a movement that started with the late 1950s, 1960s, in what in French, in film studies, it's called the French New Wave, where directors such as François Truffaut and others produced films, for example, Le 400 Coups, Breathless, and Jules le Jim, that broke the rules of Hollywood cinema's narrative structure. For example, some film critics argue that a typical Hollywood movie has a happy ending, and there's also a love story found in a movie narrative. Also, in a typical Hollywood movie, we know where we are in time and place. For example, the Jurassic Park movies start with a location and sometimes an approximate time period of when this action takes place. As we watch this film and analyze it, I like to please answer the questions on Canvas. The main question is, in your opinion, what is the message of the short film and how is it expressed cinematically in the film? I have attached a handout on how to analyze the film if you need some ideas. If you don't know much about film studies, if you haven't taken a film studies class, that is okay. When I was at Ohio State, in grad school, I even took a French cinema class, and but like I said, it's okay if you have never taken a film studies class. What I like for you to think in terms of analyzing the film, such as this one, the Telegram, think about, for example, the music, how it helps to build a suspense, how it helps to generate a certain emotion, and also, for example, the way the mail carrier walks and the emphasis on his walking, what effect does this produce in the film? Also, for example, the long, peaceful, panoramic view at the beginning of and the end of the movie. What is it trying to symbolize? And what kind of ending does the movie have? Whose son died in a war? And for example, how does this contrast with the ending of a typical Hollywood movie, in your opinion? All right, thank you very much for your attention to this lecture this week. If you have any questions, send me a message. Okay, merci. Thank you.